Aristotle has left us with a bunch of puzzles. We found that happiness is an activity of the soul in accord with virtue, and it's going to have something with the fulfillment or satisfaction of our rational nature. So that's what happiness is. And boy, weren't we wrong when we thought it was pleasure, money-making, or the public life, right? Well, wrong. What about those physical, material, and social goods, those things that we value in our lives? Right? Were we completely wrong? Well, no. Aristotle claims on page 21, let me double check that, 17 of your copy of the Nicomachean Ethics at the bottom of the page, that, nonetheless, happiness evidently also needs external goods to be added as well, since we cannot easily do fine actions if we lack the resources. For first of all, in many actions we use friends, wealth, and political power just as we use instruments. Further, deprivation of certain externals, for instance good birth, good children, beauty, mars our blessedness. For we do not altogether have the character of happiness if we look utterly repulsive, or are ill-born, solitary, or childless, and we have it even less, presumably, if our children or friends are totally bad or were good but have died. And also, as we have said, happiness would seem to need this sort of prosperity added also. That is why some identify happiness with good fortune and others identify it with virtue. So the puzzle is luck. Happiness, what does it have to do with luck? Aristotle, on the one hand, has said that happiness is not pleasure, the public life, or money. Right? But on the other hand, he's pointed out to us that happiness is going to need these external goods. What he's describing here, with happiness being an activity of the soul in accord with virtue, is that happiness, at its root, is a sort of almost spiritual self-satisfaction that we have with our lives. It's being able to look in the mirror and saying to ourselves that we've done a good job. But what if I do a good job and my house burns down? That's not very good. What if I do a good job, I live as good and virtuous a life as possible, and I come down with cancer, and I suffer horribly? Right? What if I do a good job, I'm as good a husband or a partner as possible to somebody, and they come down with cancer and they die? Right? It would seem that these external goods, these material conditions, do play some sort of a role. And this leads a lot of people to equate happiness with good fortune or luck. But what Aristotle wants to point out, and he does so in the argument that he makes in Book 9 of Book 1, Section 9 of the Nicomachean Ethics, is that happiness cannot be a result of fortune, but rather it's got to have something to do with learning or habituation. Right? So, if happiness has something to do with luck or fortune, right, then happiness is not something that's in our control or up to us. Right? It's not something that we can do something about. So if we equate happiness to good fortune or luck, right, then happiness as an idea, as a concept, fails to do what we need it to do, to be the end of all action, right, to be that good that we seek for its own sake, right, etc. Right? So Aristotle points out to us here, right, right by squiggle 7 in section 9 of book 1 of the Nicomachean Ethics on page 12. Oh, and the previous quotation was from page 11, my apologies. Right. The answer to our question is also evident from our account, for we've said that happiness is a certain activity of the soul in accord with virtue, and hence not a result of fortune. Of the other goods, some are necessary conditions of happiness, while others are naturally useful and cooperative as instruments, but are not parts of it. Further, this conclusion agrees with our opening remarks. For we took the goal of political science to be the best good, and most of its attention is devoted to the character of the citizens, to make them good people who do fine actions. It's not surprising, then, that we regard neither the ox nor the horse nor any other kind of animal as happy, for none of them can share this sort of activity. For the same reason a child is not happy either, since his age prevents him from doing these sorts of actions. If he is called happy, he is being congratulated simply because of the anticipated blessedness, for, as we have said, happiness requires both a complete life and complete virtue. Another way around, complete virtue and a complete life. So, right, what we see here is that Aristotle is arguing that happiness can't be a result of luck. Luck has something to do with it, but if we think of a virtuous person, right, if I live that life of virtue, oh darn, my house burns down. I have a stroke of bad luck. But what do I have? Insurance. What else do I have? As a result of my virtue, I've got a lot of very good friends who will help me. Right? Etc., etc., etc. So virtue, defining happiness as virtue, allows you to make the best of a bad situation. Virtue, when bad luck strikes you, allows you to handle it. Right? On the other side of the coin, somebody without virtue, picture the most irresponsible person you know. And now picture that person winning $10 million in the lottery. What do you think is going to happen? How long do you think they'll have that money? There was a case in Michigan where a fellow won the lottery, bought himself a cottage, bought each of his friends a Cadillac, was going through money left and right. Right? Within a year, he was down to about $1 million, and somebody mentioned to him, you know you're going to have to pay tax on that, eh? Right? So, without virtue, when good luck happens, you're going to screw it up. Right? You're able to make the most of good luck by exercising these virtues, and minimize the negative effects of bad luck. Right? So what Aristotle's claiming here is that a happy life, a good life for a human being, is going to be a certain rational skill. It's going to be a skill. It's going to be living a life skillfully. Well, right? Now, all of this about animals not being happy, and for the same reason children not being happy. What do we make of that? Well, Sheldon, my cat, lacks the rational kind of self-awareness that I have. Right? Much like the dog that I was talking about in the story earlier. Right? He develops certain contradictions between what he wants and what he wants. And in that way, he prevents himself from getting what he wants, the same way you and I, if we don't think it through, shoot ourselves in the foot when we attempt to attain happiness. Right? So Sheldon cannot be happy the way a human can be happy. But not every human, because of their rationality, is happy, because it's a skillful exercise of that rationality. It's not just the function of a human being, right? It's not just a natural ability. It's to perform that function well. Right? So that's book one of the Nicomachean Ethics. Right? Now, we should probably define virtue, right? And this is what Aristotle does in the opening sections of book 2 of the Nicomachean Ethics. He draws a distinction between two kinds of virtue. Right? Virtue is of two sorts: intellectual and moral. Right? And book 2 2 of the Nicomachean Ethics is going to concentrate on moral virtue, or what he calls